I was a wife, a mother. Then he touched my soul in a way I couldn't undo. His hand gripped the back of my thigh with such intensity, it stole the breath right out of me. I gasped, my lips parted in silence, the air thick between us, as he pushed in, slow, deliberate, every inch of him, echoing a truth I hadn't wanted to admit. I bit down hard on my lower lip, tasting the sharp tang of blood, trying to stay quiet, trying not to give in completely. We weren't in some secret hotel room. No dim lights, no velvet curtains. Just the narrow hallway by the laundry room, door cracked open to the kitchen. I could hear the fridge humming, the ticking clock. Every sound felt louder than it should, because at any moment someone could pass by, someone could see. My hand reached for the edge of the washer, the coolness of the metal grounding me, while my knees trembled under the weight of what we were doing. His breath came hot against my neck, ragged and uneven, matching the way my thoughts spun. "I can't slow down," he whispered, his voice breaking his fingers, digging deeper into my skin. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Just this unbearable ache, this impossible stretch of body and soul. My entire being tensed, shaking between the urge to pull away and the desperate need for more. I bit my lip harder. My eyes clenched shut. The heat rose from deep within, wrapping me in guilt and longing that twisted every breath. I never thought I'd be this woman, the kind that braces herself against a washing machine, while someone she should never have even looked at that way buries himself so deep inside, she forgets how to breathe. His name is Aiden, 26, half my age. I'm Elise, 39, a wife, a mother, the planner of birthdays, the keeper of appointments, the woman who makes sure there's milk in the fridge dinner, on the stove, clean socks in the drawers. I thought I was immune to mistakes like this, immune to wanting something impossible. But the moment he walked in that day, closed the door behind him, and stood so close I could feel the warmth of him brushing my skin, I stopped being the person I thought I knew. Let me ask you something if you're still here. What would you do if the very person you were supposed to keep safe became the one you craved in secret? When he moved deeper, a groan slipped from him, low roar. It shot through me like lightning. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. The guilt pressed into my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. "I'm sorry," he murmured, forehead against my shoulder, voice hoarse. But I didn't answer. I didn't stop him. I let it happen. If you've ever loved something you weren't supposed to, if you've ever lived with a secret that made you ache and burn at the same time, then maybe, just maybe, you understand this. Please, if this story resonates with you in ways you weren't expecting, consider subscribing to Love and Tears. There's more here for you. More stories that speak the things no one dares say out loud. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, beside my husband, his soft, snoring a steady rhythm beside me. I stared up at the ceiling fan, watching the slow, endless spinning. Every time I blinked, I saw it again. The hallway light, the slick floor, Aiden's trembling hands, and the way I didn't stop him. The guilt was like acid in my gut, but underneath it, coiled tight and glowing, was something else. The memory of how he made me feel, wanted. I've spent so many years taking care of others. My husband works long hours. I used to believe it was for us, for the kids, the house, the dreams. But now, sometimes I think it's just easier for him not to see me. We don't argue. We don't touch. We orbit each other like strangers who share polite meals. In the dead of night, when I reach for him in my sleep, he turns away without even knowing it. I told myself that was normal, that loneliness is just something you learn to carry. You keep moving forward because everyone else needs you to. And then came Aiden. He wasn't supposed to matter. Just a favor for a friend, a young man helping out with the garage renovation. He showed up each day on time, tools in hand, quiet and respectful. He carried the heavy boxes, fixed drawers without being asked, cleaned up after himself. At first, I barely registered him. I was drowning in to-do lists, groceries, appointments, soccer practice. But he noticed me. He asked about my day. He saw when I was tired. And when he looked at me, he really saw me. He wasn't supposed to matter. But he saw through me, like no one else did. Aiden watched me with a gentleness that did something strange to my stomach. A flutter I hadn't felt since I was 21. And someone first made me feel like I was the center of the room. I told myself it meant nothing, that I was older, wiser, that he was simply being kind. But it was the way he lingered in doorways when I bent down to pick something up. The way his shoulder brushed against mine in the narrow hall. The way my name sounded different in his voice, softer like a secret. And slowly, something began to bloom inside me. Something I didn't know how to bury. One afternoon he stayed late, said there was a leak under the kitchen sink. My husband wasn't home. Just the quiet house and the faint drip of water echoing like a ticking clock I didn't want to face. Aiden knelt by the cabinet, his shirt lifting just enough for me to see the muscle at his lower back. The pink skin where denim dipped too low. I should have looked away. But I didn't, and when he stood, damp hands reaching up to brush a loose strand of hair from my face, something shifted. A crack split through the wall I'd spent years building. Maybe a part of me wanted it to happen, even if I couldn't say it aloud. After that day in the hallway, I made a vow to myself, never again. I told myself I would be stronger. I would shut it down. I would pretend nothing ever happened. But then came the smallest things, the ones that don't seem to matter until they do. The way he stood too close when handing me a screwdriver. The warmth of his fingers grazing mine, holding just a second too long. The smudge of pencil on his calloused hands when he passed me notes with measurements. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. He started staying later, helping with little things around the house, every time with a reason that made sense on paper. But the truth, he was filling in the silence. My husband barely noticed. He worked late. He came home tired. He collapsed onto the couch, with dinner reheated from the night before. And Aiden, he was showing up in all the places my husband had long since disappeared. The longer he stayed, the harder it became to let him go. And when he left, oh, the quiet that followed. I'd stand in the kitchen, clutching the counter arms, rigid at my sides, just to stop the trembling. Not from fear, but from the ache of absence. One night after dinner, I found him in the garage, sifting through dusty boxes, like he belonged there. The television buzzed quietly in the living room. My husband snored, half buried, in his usual sleep on the couch. I stood in the doorway, arms wrapped tightly around myself like armor. I didn't know what to say. Everything I could say would have shattered something inside me. Aiden looked up. His eyes swept over me, slow and searching in the dim light. "You don't have to watch me work," he said gently. I lied, shifting awkwardly. I just needed a minute. He set the rag down, took a step toward me, close enough that I could smell sweat, sawdust, and soap, something warm and human. "You always look like you're holding your breath," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "I don't know what you mean, but..." Even I could hear the weakness in my voice. His hand twitched by his side, like it wanted to reach for me. But he didn't. "Not yet. You don't have to pretend with me," he said. His voice was velvet, and guilt and longing all wrapped into one. "Don't I?" breathed, voice cracking like the edge of glass. "I can't help it," he said, eyes locked on mine, and neither of us moved. Not even to blink, only the sound of the fridge humming through the wall, suddenly so loud it felt like thunder. Have you ever found yourself wanting something you couldn't have, but couldn't let go of either? If you're still here, maybe the story has touched a place in you that rarely gets spoken out loud. Subscribe to Love and Tears, because sometimes it's not about the happy ending. It's about telling the truth no one else dares to. The rain knew what we'd done, and it kept beating like a confession we couldn't say. The next morning, I didn't answer the knock on the back door. I made myself busy errands, laundry phone calls that didn't need to be made. But that night, I lay wide awake. All I could think about was the way Aiden's breath had trembled when he looked at me. The way my name cracked in his throat like a prayer he was too ashamed to finish. A few days passed. I told myself I was better, stronger. But there I was again, alone in the kitchen, wiping the same spotless counters just to give my hands something to do. And then the door creaked. He stepped in without knocking, hair damp from the rain eyes, shadowed and tired, like he hadn't slept either. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered, gripping the dish towel so tightly my knuckles went white. "I couldn't stay away," he said. His voice shook, not from cold, but from knowing this was wrong and not being able to stop anyway. He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body, close enough that his breath skimmed my skin. "Don't," I whispered again. But I didn't move. His hand brushed mine, slow, careful, almost reverent. I exhaled a broken breath. Tears burned behind my eyes. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, voice low. "Please," I said, but I didn't finish the sentence. He leaned in, lips brushing my temple, his breath hot and trembling. "Tell me to leave," he whispered, but I stayed silent because I didn't want him to. That night, I lay beside my husband like a ghost in someone else's life. Part of me wanted to scream, to confess everything, to beg someone to pull me out of the fire before it consumed everything. But the other part The other part wanted the fire. I tried to let the guilt drown the hunger. But every day, it got harder to tell them apart. Then came Friday. The sky turned the color of Bruce's clouds, hanging low, like the whole world was about to break. I scrubbed the kitchen counters until my hands were red and raw, trying to erase something I couldn't name. The rain started as a whisper, soft, steady. I thought I was alone until the back door opened, slow, careful. My breath hitched before I even saw him. "I told you not to come," I said, fingers digging into the edge of the sink. He stepped in wet hair, curling at the edges, shirt soaked and clinging to every inch of him. He shut the door behind him, the sound final. I tried. He breathed, voice rough and breaking. I swear to God I tried. I shook my head, but I didn't back away. I couldn't. In 3 strides, he crossed the room. Boots squeaked on the linoleum. Then he was in front of me. So close, too close. "Don't," I whispered. My voice cracked. "Tell me to stop." He set his forehead against mine. "Tell me you don't want this." My lips parted, but nothing came out. And then he kissed me, hard, hungry. His hands slipped under my shirt, rough and warm and shaking. I gasped, clinging to the counter, my whole body trembling as he pressed me back against the cold tile. I shouldn't, I breathed. But my fingers dug into his arms. "I know," he whispered. "God, Elise, I know." He lifted me onto the counter with a quick motion. The surface was freezing against my skin, but I barely noticed. The rain slammed against the windows, drowning everything in its rhythm. The only other sound was our breathing, raw and unsteady. He pressed into me, the heat of him searing through denim and cotton. I whimpered, biting my lip, my body rigid with tension. "Please," I whispered. Though I didn't know if I meant stop or "don't you dare stop." His hands gripped my hips so tightly, I knew there'd be bruises. His breath came in frantic bursts. "I can't." "Slow down," he panted, eyes wide and desperate. He fumbled with my jeans, pushing them down, just enough, his hands tracing the lines of me, like he'd dreamed it for weeks. Maybe we both had. When he touched me, it wasn't gentle. It was reverent, desperate, honest. I cried out soft and sharp, my hands clawing at his shirt. His mouth found my neck, hot and trembling. And when he finally pushed inside, slow, careful, I couldn't breathe. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. He groaned into my ear. "God, you feel..." But the rest of the words died in his throat. I clung to him like a lifeline. The rain, our breathing, the sound of skin against skin. Every thrust tore through me, guilt and pleasure, tangled so tightly. I thought I might shatter. "I'm sorry," he whispered, forehead against my shoulder. But he didn't stop. I know I gasped, throat exposed, as his lips found the hollow of my neck. The room felt too small, too hot, like the air itself might collapse in on us if anyone saw, if anyone heard. And when it was over, he held me, both of us still shaking. The rain filled the room with its steady grief. "I can't stop," he whispered. His voice cracked, broken, and neither could I. When he left, I didn't move. I stood in that kitchen, arms wrapped tight around myself, the cold draft crawling under the door. I told myself it was over, that I wouldn't let it happen again. But the ache in my chest didn't fade. It settled there, sharp, heavy, like a truth I couldn't outrun. If you've ever loved in silence, if you've ever stood trembling in your own kitchen, knowing the line you've just crossed can never be erased, then maybe this story isn't just fiction to you. Subscribe to Love and Tears. Because sometimes the stories we tell are the ones we're too afraid to live out loud. Some secrets don't explode. They erode everything quietly. That night, I made dinner like nothing had happened. The table was set. The wine poured. I smiled when Andrew, my husband, made some dry joke about the neighbor's dog barking through the night again. I nodded. I laughed in all the right places. Passed him the salt with steady hands, or at least hands that looked steady. But every time I blinked, I saw Aiden, rain-soaked, breathless. The way he said my name like it was the only word he knew how to say. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to Andrew's calm, even breathing beside me. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of Aiden, his hands, the warmth of his skin, the cracked way he'd whispered, "I can't stop." And in the morning, there it was, a message. "I can't stop thinking about you. I'm sorry, but I can't." I placed the phone face down on the counter, my chest tight, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the coffee mug. He kept coming by, always with a reason. A squeaky hinge, a small crack in the drywall, a measurement he forgot for the garage project. I told myself it wouldn't happen again, that I'd be stronger, that I'd put a stop to it before the lines blurred even more. But every time he stepped into the house, the air changed. It narrowed, focused, until there was only him and me. The way his shoulder grazed mine in the hallway, the accidental touch of fingers over a screwdriver, the way my name caught in his throat, like he was afraid it might escape too loudly. And then the notes began, slipped into the drawer where I kept the scissors, tucked under junk mail, folded into dish towels. "I can't stop wanting you. Tell me you don't feel this too. I'll leave if you tell me to. But God, I don't want to." I tore them up. I threw them away. But not before I read them. More than once, holding the papers so tight it crumpled in my palm. My breath shallow. My hands shaking. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the dark kitchen window. Just a pale blur. Hollow eyes, and a face I no longer recognized. Every creak in the floorboards made my heart seize. Every buzz of the phone made my hands go cold. Terrified it was him. Terrified it wasn't. We kept finding quiet corners of time, moments stolen in plain sight. A brush of his thumb across my knuckles. A look too long. A whisper that made the air between us ache. "We can't keep doing this," I told him once, knuckles white against the counter. I know he breathed, pressing his forehead to the side of my head. But I don't know how to stop, and neither did I. Sometimes I hated him for it, for unlocking something in me I thought was long dead, for showing me how empty I'd become. Other times I hated myself more for wanting it, for needing him more than I wanted to admit. I cleaned. I organized. Scrubbed every inch of the house, like I could scrub him out of my skin. But every time he spoke my name, every time his breath touched my cheek, the ground beneath me vanished again. I didn't know if I wanted to stop or if I just wanted to stop hating myself for not stopping. It didn't collapse all at once. It was slow, subtle, cracks forming in all the places I thought were safe. Like the way Andrew started watching me over dinner, eyes narrowed, mouth pressed in a tight line. Or the day my daughter found one of Aiden's notes, not torn up enough, still legible. "Who wrote this?" she asked, confused. I froze. My pulse roared in my ears. "It's nothing," I whispered, snatching the paper and crushing it in my fist. But the suspicion settled behind her eyes like a shadow. That night, I stood by the window, watching the empty street. No headlights, no messages, no footsteps. He was avoiding me. He hadn't come, hadn't texted, hadn't left another note. The silence hurt worse than the guilt. It wrapped around me like a cold wind. Part of me wanted him gone. Gone for good. Gone where he couldn't ruin what I had left. The other part wanted him to kick in the door. To say he didn't care who knew. To say he couldn't breathe without me. A week passed. Then I heard his voice in the hallway, talking to Andrew. I froze. My stomach dropped. I stepped into the kitchen and gripped the counter like it was the only thing keeping me upright. They stood by the front door. Polite words, tense air. "Thanks for your help," Andrew said, handing him a folded check. "But we won't need you anymore." Aiden's jaw clenched. He looked past my husband, and for 1 second his eyes met mine. Guilt, pain, loss, before he turned and walked out. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. That night I lay in bed still, frozen, waiting for the sound of boots on tile, for a whisper in the dark. But it never came. The house was quiet, too quiet. I've lived with guilt before, but never guilt that felt like warmth. Never guilt that tasted like longing. Never guilt that made me feel more alive than I had in years. If you've ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the woman staring back, if you've ever loved someone, you weren't supposed to even miss this story is for you. Subscribe to Love and Tears. Because some confessions don't happen in words. They happen in silence and in the spaces between what we say. I didn't lose him. I lost myself first. Weeks passed. The rain stopped. The sun came out again, and life went on. At least it looked that way from the outside. I still folded the laundry. Still went to the grocery store. Still made dinner at 6, set the table, asked the kids about their day. But something in me had gone quiet. Still, like a part of me had been buried in that rain-soaked kitchen and I didn't know how to dig it back up. Aiden never came back, not to fix the gutters, not to ask about the garage, not even to say goodbye. His number disappeared from my phone. The drawer where he used to leave notes stayed empty. I'd sometimes open it just to check, even though I knew better. The silence wasn't loud, it was soft. Like dust settling after something breaks, like grief that no one can see. One afternoon, I stood in the hallway where it all started. The same tile, the same ticking clock, the same hum of the refrigerator, and I let myself remember. Not to torture myself, but because pretending it never happened hurt more. I remembered the way his voice caught when he said my name, the heat of his hand on my skin, the trembling in his chest when he whispered, "I'm sorry," but didn't stop. And I remembered my own voice, how it never once told him to leave. The truth is, I loved the way he made me feel seen, desired, alive. But that wasn't love. It was escape. It was oxygen after years of drowning quietly. I didn't lose him. I lost myself first. That's the part no one tells you. That infidelity doesn't always come with shouting and slammed doors. Sometimes it begins with silence, with a glance that lingers, with a hand brushing yours just a second too long. I wish I could say I learned something pure from all of this, that I found redemption, that I healed. But healing doesn't always look like closure. Sometimes it's just sitting in the wreckage long enough to understand why you ran into the fire in the first place. I still dream about him sometimes. And when I wake, I don't cry. I just lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the stillness of the house, trying to remember the version of me that used to live here. Before the notes, before the rain, before the wanting. If you're still listening, maybe you felt it too. The ache of being touched without ever being seen. The loneliness of sleeping beside someone who stopped reaching for you. The unbearable silence between who you are and who you used to be. To every woman who's ever made herself small to survive. To every heart that's broken quietly behind the kitchen sink. To every story that lives in silence, you are not alone. Subscribe to Love and Tears, because some stories aren't written to be judged. They're told to be understood.